and his administration relentlessly pursued a diplomatic solution to the threat posed by Iran. But the Iranian regime refused diplomatic off-ramps. And so now the President's taking action. My prayers are for the success of the mission and, above all, for the safety of U.S. personnel in harm's way. 4 U.S. service members have lost their lives as a result of Iranian attacks. My thoughts and prayers today are with their families and loved ones and with their fellow service members. Mr. President, ask a group of people what they think of when they think of the American dream, and home ownership is pretty likely to come up. A house, a neighborhood, a yard for the kids or pet to play, getting the keys to a place of your own. That's a part of the American dream for a lot of Americans. But it's a part of the American dream that has been increasingly out of reach for many. A lot of Americans, particularly younger Americans, are simply being priced out of the housing market. Home prices have risen sharply in the past few years, surging roughly 50% since the pandemic, according to the New York Times. A 2025 report from the Joint Center for Housing Studies at Harvard reported, and I quote, the U.S. median existing single-family home price hit a new high of $412,500 in 2024, according to the National Association of Realtors. This is a shocking 5 times the median household income and significantly above the price-to-income ratio of 3 that has traditionally been considered affordable, end quote. Well, with numbers like these, Mr. President, it's no wonder that the age of first-time home buyers has risen sharply as well to an all-time high of age 40. Mr. President, the American people have been through a lot over the last few years, notably the historic inflation crisis that defined the Biden administration. And since we took office last January, Republicans' priority here in Congress has been easing the burden on hardworking Americans. That started with preventing a massive $2.6 trillion tax hike that was scheduled to hit Americans making less than $400,000 a year. And it continued with a slew of new tax relief for hardworking Americans and the working families tax cuts, which Republicans passed last summer. There's nothing like having more money in your pocket to make it a little easier to deal with financial challenges and unexpected bills. In January of this year, we took aim at health care costs with a bill that included multiple measures to lower the price of prescription drugs at the pharmacy counter. And this week, Mr. President, we are tackling the challenges of home ownership and beginning work on the most significant housing bill in a decade or more. The Road to Housing Act, the product of extensive work from the Senate Banking Committee, and particularly from its chairman, Tim Scott, packages together a number of bills focused on lowering housing costs and increasing housing supply. And it takes aim at these goals in multiple ways. One primary focus of the bill is removing unnecessary regulatory barriers that drive up the cost of housing or complicate construction. The bill's Housing Supply Expansion Act, for example, which is the product of Senators Britt, Tillis, Crapo, and others, removes the outdated chassis requirement for manufactured housing. This will not only lower the cost of manufactured homes, but it will also allow for more innovation in the manufactured home design process, such as two-story houses. Manufactured homes are already substantially less expensive than site-built dwellings, and removing the outdated chassis rule will further increase their affordability and create more manufactured options that suit more families. And that, Mr. President, is just the tip of the iceberg. Senator Rounds has multiple bills in the Road to Housing Act that will increase housing supply by streamlining the environmental review process. The Choice and Affordable Housing Act, the work of Senators Kramer, Sullivan, Moran, and Curtis, as well as others, will streamline inspection requirements for affordable homes financed by multiple government programs. And I could go on. There are a lot more measures in the Road to Housing Act to eliminate or streamline regulations. And with regulations accounting for around 25% of the cost of constructing a single-family dwelling and for roughly 40% of the costs of multifamily housing projects, anything we can do to streamline and simplify can go a long way toward making housing more affordable. But the Road to Housing Act does a lot more than simply targeting unnecessary regulations. The act is also designed to unleash private sector investment in more affordable homes. Road Act legislation from Senators Scott, Marino, McCormick, Cassidy, and Crapo, for example, will increase the statutory cap that limits banks' ability to invest in more affordable housing and other community development projects. The Build Now Act from Senator Kennedy creates a pilot program to incentivize a wide variety of housing development in communities that participate in the Federal Community Development Block Grant Program. Mr. President, there's a lot more in the Road to Housing Act that I can discuss in one speech. There's much more I could say on the ways this bill will streamline regulation and unleash investment. And I haven't even mentioned the bill's provisions to help veterans, or increase the supply of housing in rural communities, or help Americans living in government-assisted housing build the savings that they need for home ownership. There's a lot in this bill, Mr. President. And I want to extend my thanks to Banking Committee Chairman Scott and Ranking Member Elizabeth Warren for putting in the work to assemble so many good pieces of legislation and to get the final product to the floor. The Road to Housing Act doesn't spend a single taxpayer dollar, Mr. President. But by removing barriers to affordable housing construction and unleashing investment, this bill stands to open the door to affordable homes for hardworking Americans around the country. And I look forward to passing this legislation in the very near future. Mr. President, I yield the floor, and I suggest the absence of a quorum.
Clerk will call the roll.
Ms. Alsobrooks.
Israeli intentions and understood what that would mean for us, and we had to be prepared to act as a result of it. But this had to happen no matter what.
Secretary, President Trump said overnight that his top choices to now run Iran were killed in the strikes. Does the United States have a firm plan for how they intend to handle this power vacuum in Iran to ensure that an Iron hardliner does not take power?
So two things, and two things can be true. Number one is our mission and our focus is the destruction of their ballistic missile capabilities and their ability to manufacture them, as well as the threat posed by their Navy to global shipping. That's our objective. That said, we would not mind, we would not be heartbroken, and we hope that the Iranian people can overthrow this government and establish a new future for that country. We would love for that to be possible. But the objective of this mission is the destruction of their ballistic missile capabilities and of their naval capabilities.
How do you say, Mr. Secretary?
Yep.
Mr. Secretary, so are you saying, based on that, are you saying that there is no responsibility, no plan for the U.S. to at least play a role in whatever government comes next?
We might. We'll see how circumstances play out. But I'm telling you what the objectives of this operation are. The objectives of this operation are to destroy their ballistic missile capability and make sure they can't rebuild it, and make sure that they can't hide behind that to have a nuclear program. That's the objective of the mission. That said, abundantly clear, we would love for there to be an Iran that's not governed by radical Shia clerics. As I've said myself repeatedly for years, the leadership of that country does not reflect the people of Iran, and I think that's been pretty apparent in the protests that you've seen. If there's something we can do to help them down the road, we'd obviously be open to it, but that's not the objective. The objective of this mission is the destruction of their ballistic missile capability.
Regime change has not gone well for the United States.
The what now?
Regime change has not gone well for the United States for many, many decades. How do you assure the American public that things will not get worse for the next regime that comes in there and replaces the actual one?
We would love to see this regime be replaced. And ultimately, as the President has said,
How
he
do
calls...
you know that?
No, but let me finish my answer. As the President has said, he would love for the people of Iran to use this as an opportunity to rise up and remove these leaders. They've been wanting to remove them from a long time. We've seen successive waves of protests, and we've seen them slaughter people. Okay? But the objective of this mission is to make sure they don't have these weapons that can threaten us and our allies in the region. That's why we're doing what we're doing now. And while we would love to see a new regime, the bottom line is no matter who governs that country a year from now, they're not going to have these ballistic missiles and they're not going to have these drones to threaten us. That's the objective of this mission, is to deny them the ability to use ballistic missiles to threaten their neighbors, to threaten our bases, to threaten our presence in the region, and ultimately as a shield behind which they can do whatever they want with their nuclear weapons ambition. We were not going to let them hide behind that, and that's why this was such a critical mission to undertake now while they were at their weakest point, and not a year from now where they could inflict even more damage and perhaps already be behind that point of immunity. Go right here behind. Go ahead, you and then you. Yes.
Your critics in Congress have said that they should have a role, they should be able to weigh in here, and there are going to be war powers resolutions votes in Congress later this week. Why not notify Congress ahead of this, and does Congress...
Well, we did. We notified Congress. I mean, we notified the Gang of Eight. We notified congressional leadership. There's no law that requires us to do that. The law says we have to notify them 48 hours after beginning hostilities. We've done that. I think the notification went today. But we did notify members of Congress in advance. But we can't notify 535 members of Congress.
And,
well, the Congress can vote on whatever they want, but there's no law that requires us to do that. And I want to say something, because I see people on TV. Look, that's fine. If they want to take a war powers vote, they can do that. They've done that. They've done that a bunch of times. But there's no, people keep saying that there's no law that requires the president to have done anything with regards to this. To begin with, no presidential administration has ever accepted the War Powers Act as constitutional. Not Republican presidents, not Democratic presidents. That said, we have followed the notification at 48 hours, and we're here today. I've done more Gang of Eight briefings than I got in the 4 years that Biden was president and I was a member of the Gang of Eight. All of that said, we've complied with the law 100%. And we're going to continue to comply with it. We've done the notification, and we officially to Congress, but we did notify members of Congress. We just can't notify 535 people. That's not possible, but we did the Gang of Eight twice. I briefed them last week, and then I called them the night before the operation.
Can you tell us what you know, Mr. Secretary, of the administration knows about the strike on a building in southern Iran? The Iranians saying it was a school, reports of large civilians, including the children killed.
Yeah, I've seen those reports. I would refer you, not because I'm not trying to answer your question, but I don't want to get it wrong. The Department of War would be investigating that if that was our strike, and I would refer your question to them, and I'll make sure they're aware that you have that question. But we'd like to know. Well, clearly, the United States would not deliberately target a school. Our objectives are missiles, both the ability to manufacture them and the ability to launch them, and the one-way attract drones. That would be our focus, and that's what we would be focused on. We would have no interest and, frankly, no incentive to target civilian infrastructure. The Iranians are, on the other hand, targeting civilian infrastructure. You guys have seen it. I'm sure you've seen it. They're hitting hotels. They're hitting embassies. They're hitting airports. They're hitting oil infrastructure. Well, it'd be very tragic, but I can't speak to the details behind it because I just don't have it. It would be a tragic outcome if it's happened. I don't have the details as to what led to it. But what is clear is that the United States would not deliberately target a school. They are, on the other hand, deliberately targeting civilians, as you've seen, because you know why? They are a terroristic regime. They sponsor terrorism and they participate in terrorism.
Rubio, what's your message to Americans who are concerned about rising energy prices given the spiking of oil prices today?
Yes, and we knew that going in would be a factor, and so we have a program in place that will begin to be implemented by Secretary Wright, Secretary Bessent. We talked about it last night, again, about this program. We talked this morning, and starting tomorrow you will see us rolling out those phases to try to mitigate against that. Obviously, markets are going to be reacting to news about what's happening. And again, a reminder, think about it, okay? This terroristic regime, led by radical clerics, has the ability, potentially, to shut off 20% of global energy. That's the kind of leverage they have because of their Navy. We're going to destroy their Navy. But there is a plan in place. We anticipated this could be an issue, and Secretary Wright and Bessent will begin to roll out those steps starting tomorrow to mitigate against the impact that could have. What time? I got to do this briefing, so I got a couple more. Yeah.
Do you anticipate putting boots on the ground, and how long do you anticipate the conflict to last?
Well, we don't. Let me say two things about it. Number one, the president always has the options to undertake whatever operations he decides to do as the commander-in-chief. That said, we believe the objective that we have set for this mission, which is the destruction of their ballistic missile capabilities, both launch capability and manufacturing, can be achieved without ground forces. Right now, we're not postured for ground forces, but obviously the president has those options. He's never going to rule out anything. But right now, our focus is on the destruction of their ballistic missile launchers, their ballistic missile stockpiles, and their ballistic missile manufacturing capability, as well as their one-way attract drones and their Navy, because of the threat it poses to global shipping.
How long is
All right, I can only do one more. Right there in the middle. Yes, sir.
Is there a diplomatic exchange going on right now between U.S. and Iran? Any exchanges whatsoever outside of
No, not at this time. I mean, look, we always have people that reach out from inside of governments. You don't know if they're authorized to reach out or not. They're suffering a tremendous amount of damage. Honestly, again, I'm not going to give away the details of our tactical efforts, but the hardest hits are yet to come from the U.S. military. The next phase will be even more punishing on Iran than it is right now. Someone was screaming, how long will it take? I don't know how long it'll take. We have objectives. We will do this as long as it takes to achieve those objectives, and we will achieve those objectives. The world will be a safer place when we're done with this operation. All right? Thank you, guys. Thank you.